Yo, this Oneyplays drama is wild. If you clicked on this video, I assume you have watched or still watch Oneyplays, or maybe you just like drama and there's not enough drama merchants out there for you. But I'm going to assume you know the gist of, at the very least, the people involved, their history with Oneyplays. But for the uninitiated, Oneyplays started as just a side channel for OneyNG, the animator, to do Let's Plays, and in the beginning, most of the videos, they weren't that frequent, and they were just Oni himself playing games. Occasionally there would be a guest or two pop up, but eventually two guys, Ding Dong and Julian, became regulars of the show, and the Let's Play channel was mainly Chris O'Neill, Ding Dong, and Julian. After a few years, they left to do their own thing. There was a few instances where they popped back up for some guest appearances, but for the past couple years they have been gone from the channel, and now we know why, and now we know that is also seemingly for good. Ding Dong had this massive 24+ hour stream where he would go in and out of crashing out about his time at Oneyplays and his time in particular with Chris. Now, the main thing that kicked off all the drama is this 45-minute segment that somebody clipped of that stream where the bulk of the complaints were. There was more of this throughout the 24 hours, but according to people who stayed for it, a lot of it was Ding Dong repeating himself over and over, going delirious. There are other clips and archives of that whole stream somewhere within the Oneyplays Kiwi Farms thread if you wanted to go subject yourself to that for some reason. And then Julian apparently did his part of the stream afterwards, kind of realizing that they messed up bigly and trying to do a little bit of damage control very poorly. But I'm gonna mainly be focusing on the big 45-minute Ding Dong crash out rant that everyone has been memeing. Now, some of this gets a little messy because Ding Dong, for some reason, would never mention Chris by his name. He just kept saying they, which when you're talking about mainly one person, but then sometimes you make vague references to other people who listeners might know who that is or might not know who that is, it gets very confusing. But most of the time we know that Ding Dong is talking about Chris. He references very, very specific things, yet acts as if there's some kind of plausible deniability in who he's talking about because he keeps using they. Or maybe he's using they as an insult because the people in the LGBTQ community using the wrong pronouns is a huge insult. Now, one of the first things Ding Dong harps on is Chris, and potentially other people because he keeps saying they, but mainly Chris, making vague references / insults / callouts about him. The first thing he mentions is the tuba thing, which... oh boy, if you haven't heard about this one yet, apparently Ding Dong has a tuba and a tuba vor fetish. Process that one for a minute. The funniest part of this is that not a soul would have found out about this if he had not drawn attention to it and confirmed that Chris was referencing him. Because the clip in question was Oni seeing a tuba in a game and saying, "I'm horny."
Is that a big tuba? What is that?
Oh, I'm horny. Let's go into it. Fuck. I'm not horny anymore. Now I'm horny.
There you go.
And Ding Dong felt called out by this, so much so that he had to come out and tell the world that's not some random Oni-ism, some random joke. That was in fact a reference to me and my fetish. Folks, we're dealing with a level of mental illness here never before discovered. Now, I don't want to jump ahead too much here, but, you know, the next day Julian does come in and say that Ding Dong outed all this stuff because he was too afraid to speak up and he basically forced Ding Dong to do it on his behalf. However, Julian does not have the tuba fetish. That is squarely on Ding Dong. Like, I can't imagine your partner being like, you gotta be upset about that. You gotta go and tell the internet about that and be upset about it. Or else I'm gonna myself.
Like I wanted to self-harm with macaroni and cheese.
Ding Dong also talked about being outed as a furry, as if Oneyplays hasn't had other furries on, and regularly so. And he says it as if the term furry is derogatory, even though that's what they call themselves. He's like, oh, he called me a furry. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Corey Beck Borealis Delaminguez is a huge furry and otherwise open degenerate, and Oni and the other co-hosts have always poked fun at him for it. They poke fun at each other for everything. So for Ding Dong to act like he is being specifically called out and singled out for something that, if anything, Oni kind of shielded him for years about, that's like super disingenuous. And you know, Julian has his own idiosyncrasies, and the three of them together, when they were the main ones on Oneyplays, they would rib each other on, you know, certain things, and it didn't seem like anyone took it personally. Because the other thing now is that Ding Dong is calling Chris, you know, basically a Nazi and saying that Oneyplays gets you into the alt-right pipeline, which is kind of crazy because, like, Oni has all sorts of kinds of people on. And Ding Dong himself has said probably worse things uncensored in the past. So what we have here is another case of the iDubbbz troll's remorse. And Ding Dong frames this as if he already felt this way for a long time, so much so that when him and Julian were asked to record some more stuff for the channel after they, you know, left and moved and everything, that they did it out of some kind of sense of obligation to fans that they had already left behind for a year or two at that point. That the both of them didn't want Oni there, really. They didn't want him there any longer than 2 weeks. They didn't want that project to go on any longer than that. So they would just kind of suck it up and do Let's Plays with somebody that they already didn't like for some reason. But Ding Dong also says at the same time that they didn't do it for the money. Yet they were getting paid for it, and not only that, but Oni offered to buy a whole computer and recording setup and leave it there so that he could visit them and hang out and they could record stuff in the future. I don't know what frequency he proposed, but it sounds like Julian and Ding Dong didn't like it one bit because they said no. But then right after that, he complains about how he spent his own money on a portable hard drive to put all the footage on. And he complained about this because Oni and I guess the editors didn't want that. It was easier for them to work from a Dropbox, which, you know, with lots of footage like that, Oni is probably already paying for the Dropbox, so he figures, like, why did you go and buy a portable hard drive when we don't do that? Because I assume he would have paid for the hard drive or reimbursed them or something if, you know, that was cool with the workflow. And just as a personal aside, I can see why Oni wouldn't want to deal with a portable hard drive. I have traveled outside of the country, 5-hour-long flights. I've traveled with portable hard drive. You don't want to travel with any kind of a hard drive. If there's spinning rust holding your data and you can avoid going on a plane, an airport, anything with it, you want to avoid it. So I'm assuming that's why Oni and gang didn't want to deal with a portable hard drive. Ding Dong's defense is that they have monsoons all the time where they live, apparently, that they can never ever upload anything, even though their main source of income is streaming. So it's like you never ever get a long enough break from the monsoons and the bad weather so you can upload a file to Dropbox, but you stream for a living. Like, neither of you work normal jobs. You have to rely on donations to pay your rent, to pay your bills, to fund your game that you've been working on for almost a decade now and still isn't even out yet. And the guy that put you on the map is offering you a chance to get a little bit of that cash cow back, to which you begrudgingly accept, even though you're not doing it for the money. Which, by the way, is fine if you're doing it for the money. Like, you're playing video games for a living. Of course you're doing it for the money. You're not doing it for the art. There's no shame in that. Anyone would do that if they could, rather than work a real job. And clearly you two don't want to work a real job because you haven't, and you keep doing these streams because it's your only source of income, your only way to keep going, to fund things that you want to do and pay for all your bills and whatnot. But somehow it's not for the money. Okay, let's say it's not for the money. Maybe you're doing it to hang out with your old buddy Chris again, that you haven't seen in 2 years or whatever. But you just said it's not for that reason because you already hated him at this point. Everything was begrudging at this point. You didn't even want him coming to your home. So I'm at a loss for, and Julian and Ding Dong said exactly what this was for. Obviously, one of the things, or most of the things being said here, is a lie. They were very chill with Oni in the past. They sat next to him, they broke bread with him, they made all the edgy jokes that would get you canceled today. But when Oni stayed with them to record YIIK, what happened? Oh, we caught him. We caught him on the toilet. He's using 4chan on the toilet. Like, what? Like, this is supposed to be one of the straws that broke the camel's back?
This is too much! I can't take it anymore! Here I go! Another one down, mein Führer!
Throughout the clips, Ding Dong makes these vague references to things that he thinks Oni himself posted on 4chan. No evidence that it was him, but how would you know that if you don't use 4chan? And we know in the past he used to shill his stuff on 4chan as well, so there's multiple hypocrisies going on here. But sure, I mean, if that's too far for you, if someone is not allowed to scroll 4chan while they're taking a shit in your house, I suppose, it's your house, you can kick them out. But that wasn't where they stopped, though. They said he was just on the bed farting all the time. I'm pretty sure during this time is when Oni had the weird, back issues and he had to record, lying down in a sling. So it's kind of understandable when you're not recording. Your friend with very limited mobility at the time, all he can do is lay on the bed and fart. Also, from the way Ding Dong and Julian described their place, it sounds like it's in the middle of nowhere because they wanted to get away from absolutely everybody. And if storms and stuff are constantly destroying your internet, so much so that you can't upload a file to Dropbox, you probably do live in the middle of nowhere. So it's not like there's a whole lot to go and do other than lay in a bed and fart. And boy oh boy does Ding Dong want to make Oni and everybody else feel bad for him during this time, because he makes it sound like playing YIIK was backbreaking work. Like, oh my god, how dare you come to my house and make me play YIIK from money that you're going to pay me so I can afford to do stuff I couldn't afford to do before. How dare you throw me a lifeline in my time of need? How dare you come to me and say play video games for money? What's wrong with you, you slave driver? Now they had this big idea to sort of mod the game so the ending would be kind of weird, and they do this big fancy ending. And all Oni ever said is that it didn't work out. That's why the series never finished. They said the finale didn't work out. And Oni only ever said that because people wouldn't stop asking about it, because they like the dynamic of Ding Dong, Julian, and Oni. Ding Dong takes this in the worst possible way and makes it sound like Oni was calling him personally out and blaming him for not being able to finish the series. And the other quote going around is, I reverse engineered the game. I reverse engineered the game so we could do what you wanted to for the game for the finale. And I've seen people clowning on that Ding Dong quote, and I will give him a little bit of credit here. There doesn't seem to be a huge modding scene for YIIK, so maybe he did have to do some reverse engineering of the game to make what they wanted to do possible. On what level and how much effort was put in, I don't know. He makes it sound like it's a ton, but again, you're getting paid for it, sir. So Julian wasn't really on microphone and super present during most of this part of the stream, but there was one part where he says Oneyplays ruined my life. And if we go back to older things he's said and posted in the past, it looks like he's actually been consistent in this feeling. For some reason, he feels that being a somewhat popular Let's Player on the internet is the same as being a Mickey Mouse plush or a Mario video game sent out to millions and millions of the herds of the unwashed masses out there. And that somehow this worldwide fame and recognition of being a Let's Player who occasionally makes jokes, somehow this is a terrible thing that cannot come to pass. I get it, not everybody is cut out for the spotlight, but he did it for 2 to 3 years? And back then, they had so much goodwill. They were so beloved by the community. I hadn't seen anybody say anything bad about them. The most they had to deal with is people coming on their stuff and making Oneyplays references, making jokes, not even at their expense, just referencing and laughing at jokes that Ding Dong and Julian had made. jokes that had made random strangers on the internet laugh and enjoy them. And that was too much. That was just too much to handle. That was a cross too big to carry. So they just had to get away from it all. They had to leave liberal LA to move to whatever middle of the woods place where they're, apparently persecuted now. Like, bro, now you're not part of that. Now you have no goodwill. And now people will actually come to you and say that you're the joke. I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger fumble in e-celeb history than that. Anyways, I could go on, but I'm gonna stop myself there. At this point, I'd just be repeating more points that other people have already made, and unless they both come back and somehow make this worse, I don't think I have anything else to add. If you've watched this far, I thank you for doing so. If for some reason you enjoyed this video, I'm glad you did. I'd appreciate it if you can like, comment, subscribe, share this video with anyone that might be interested. All that stuff helps out the channels. If you want to help out even more, you can check out the links in the description to my other channels and other ways you can support. I greatly appreciate it.